Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
7:07 now on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in. This is America's Morning Show. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. And Julie, coming up in 30 minutes, we're going to talk to Dr. Marc Siegel, who has been noting an outbreak of tuberculosis and measles, mostly stemming from the shelters that have been set up for the illegal immigrants that Joe Biden has allowed into the country.
Yes.
Might want to look into that.
Yeah.
Far cry from Ellis Island protocols. 8:35, Dr. Tom Jones, astronaut, will give us his expertise on the solar eclipse, why it's important, why you should be excited about it, and why we should go out and burn our retinas looking at it. Oh, no, wait, he's not going to say that part. That part's not what he's going to say. Joining us right now is Joe diGenova, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, which, of course, part of the charge of the U.S. Attorney of the District of Columbia is to ensure that bad guys who commit crimes in the district are put away for a long time. And Joe diGenova, I'm happy to tell you that according to Pete Buttigieg, things are safer than ever here. Here, take a listen to him yesterday.
So we need to talk about the reality here. And again, there is a lot of funding and a lot of energy going into telling a different story, especially on ideological news outlets and online. But the simple facts and the simple reality are right here staring us in the face, including the fact that I can safely walk my dog to the Capitol today in a way that you couldn't do when we all got here.
There you go, Joe. The Secretary of Transportation can walk his dog to the Capitol today, so everything's fine.
And without, you just listen to him, and it's just so sickening to have to sit through the blather and the gaslighting. And you notice the ease with which it just pours out. I mean, this is a guy who couldn't run 15 buses in Indiana from a small town, and they've got him running the system, the transportation system of the United States.
Yeah.
Well, Pete Buttigieg is, let's just be blunt about it, Pete Buttigieg is an idiot. He's a smooth-talking idiot. He's sort of a short Gavin Newsom with different hair and different lifestyles, which is fine.
As far as we know.
Not that means anything, but the truth is he's an idiot. And it doesn't matter what his sexuality is. He's an idiot. Mm-hmm. And to listen to him, a guy with a security detail the size of Mount Rushmore, who rides around in Suburbans and then gets out and gets on his bike for the last block to work.
Right.
This guy is really an embarrassment. But, nothing embarrasses the people in this administration because they have the complicity of the mainstream media. Look who he's being interviewed by, Jen Psaki.
Right.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes. Hey,
that's all you need to know.
But Joe, there's also part of this what he said that this is my favorite thing. I mean, this is like a throwback to Hillary Clinton during the scandals against Bill Clinton. Listen to
So we need to talk about the reality here. And again, there is a lot of funding and a lot of energy going into telling a different story, especially on ideological news outlets and all.
Yeah, where's this funding? Because we talk about the crime problem here in D.C. quite a bit. So does some of the. I'm not getting any. Can I cash a check from some well-funded organization that's paying to pretend like there's crime and carjacking and murders in D.C. when it's not the reality?
He's confusing George Soros with Matthew Graves, our U.S. attorney. Yes. He just doesn't understand that George Soros isn't funding everything. He's just funding little bits and pieces of the media world that Buttigieg.
Joe, that is a brilliant. They say this all the time because that's what they're familiar with. Because literally, they're just assuming that the conservative side of the equation is getting as well funded as George Soros is writing checks on their side.
That's exactly right. And what Pete doesn't understand, because again, he's just dumb. He's very facile. He's very conversant with the English language. He loves these cute little metaphors and things like that. But he's just dumb. He's just uninformed. He's stupid. He's worried about walking his dog instead of worried about the bridge in Baltimore. If he wants to worry about something, he should be there once a month to check on the construction. What's going on? Are they clearing the channel? You see, they don't want to talk about stuff like that. All they want to do is create, hagiography around Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland. They want to make him look like a god because he said we should rebuild the bridge. Now, that to me was one of the great public statements of our time. Let's rebuild the bridge. Now, that was a tough one. You really had to be smart. And Westmore is there. I mean, this Hollywood figure that they've created as the governor of Maryland, this guy, honestly, God, it's just hilarious to watch. And
our plan is to rebuild the bridge. That's it.
Wow.
He's a white Westmore. No, really. Buttigieg is a white Westmore. I mean, he's just they get all these cute people, and they make them say things that they think are smart, which are really stupid. Let's rebuild the bridge. Do you have a choice? Is there an option?
Well,
yes, they're going to institute 24-hour ferry service across the Potomac.
Hey, Joe, I wanted to get your opinion on the attacks we're seeing on Judge Eileen Cannon. Jack Smith is actually seeking her to he wants her to recuse herself from the case entirely. But we've also seen in the media some sort of attacks on her. She's a real threat to this case against Trump, isn't she?
She's a threat to the timing of the case. The case itself is flawed, as are all the cases around President Trump. She's doing just minimal efforts to ensure some sort of fairness for President Trump, which none of the other judges are doing. And so she's being attacked for that. Of course, she's a Trump appointee, and she's a white woman, so already she's got problems going for her with the left. She is doing her job. And Jack Smith is very worried that she's going to include some sort of jury instruction about the Presidential Records Act, which could lead the jury to conclude that President Trump, as he claims, had every right to have possession of those documents until determinations were made about where they should end up. Jack Smith is a thug. He's an unprofessional, unethical thug who was brought out of the backwaters of Europe at The Hague to come here to the United States and do the same thing that he was doing over there. Very, very sick man, Jack Smith. And I must say, he is absolutely interested in having other lawyers criticize Judge Cannon because he needs protection, because he has abused his powers as a prosecutor. He's clearly unethical in the things that he has done in the past. He's been overturned by the Supreme Court unanimously in cases on his interpretations of the law. And he's about to be overruled on his use of this obstruction statute in the January 6th prosecutions. So there is a concerted effort to attack Trump and the people who support Trump. You recall that Reggie Walton, who is a local D.C. federal judge, attacked President Trump. Now, this is a sitting federal judge who goes after Donald Trump for Donald Trump's criticism of Judge Merchan in the New York payments case. Now, what business is it of Judge Reggie Walton, a sitting federal judge in D.C., to be on CNN giving opinions about the criticisms of a defendant in a case that he's not in? The other judge, Judge Royce Lamberth, who is a sitting federal judge, has made public statements in cases in which he's sitting as a judge about all of the January 6th defendants and President Trump, all of which are statements that are absolutely inexcusable. And what are they doing? They're criticizing people who are exercising their First Amendment rights to criticize judges in cases who are either unfair or are clearly wrong on the law. What right do these two federal judges have to be doing that? That's not what they're on the bench for. And it's just an outrageous abuse of their judicial function.
Have you ever seen anything like that from a federal?
Hold that question.
Never.
Joe, stick with us for a second. I want to follow up on that as well. And also, we've got some news about Hunter Biden's attorneys visiting the White House. It sure looks obstruction-y to me. We'll get details of that from Joe diGenova in a moment. But first, we got to...
WMAL. Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So much truth, you'll hope for traffic so you can hear it all on the Vince Colonnade Show, weekdays 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
We continue with former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia, Joe diGenova. And Joe, John Levine, a very well-sourced reporter at the New York Post, has an exclusive here after studying the visitor logs at the White House. It turns out one Abby Lowell was visiting Anthony Bemall, a top aide to First Lady Jill Biden. Abby Lowell, by the way, is Hunter Biden's attorney. They were both at the White House on December 11th in the East Wing, according to the White House visitor logs. Entry in the log appears to show Lowell met with Bernal, who is top aide to Jill Biden. Now, the White House insisted the log entry was related to a White House Hanukkah reception, and nothing about Hunter Biden was discussed. So, I mean, first of all, I don't believe them, but secondly, it doesn't matter. This, by the way, December 11th was just days before Hunter Biden defied the congressional subpoenas that was issued to him. So, I mean, again, connecting the dots here, Joe, that sure seems like an appearance of impropriety, if not outright obstruction of justice.
Well, there's no doubt that the White House is deeply involved in all of the Trump prosecutions and in the Hunter Biden testimony. Remember, President Biden is a co-conspirator with his son in the bribery scheme, which they have engaged in over a 40-year period. So Joe Biden has every reason in the world to be interested in protecting his son and to protect him in the best possible way, which will be with a pardon at the end of his first term, and if he's defeated before the inauguration of the new president. And by the way, the White House has denied that President Biden has any plans to pardon Hunter Biden. That, of course, is a lie. There's no reason in the world to believe that, nor is there any reason in the world to believe that Abby Lowell was at the White House on December the 11th to discuss a Hanukkah celebration. Of course, you would want to call in a very high-priced white-collar criminal lawyer at his hourly rate to discuss a Hanukkah reception.
Right.
I think that could be handled with a phone call. I don't think you needed a meeting. You needed a meeting so you could plan the distortion of Hunter Biden's appearance.
Well, and also, again, even if you take their word for it, and it was just a Hanukkah celebration, not a lot of people get invited to the White House for Hanukkah. And it just so happens this guy gets invited and gets this great gift and this great present and this great thing that he can use to get more business because he's a frequent visitor to the White House. He just so happens to be representing Hunter Biden, the son of the president. This is how the Bidens operate. There's always, you see all the pictures with Joe with the Russian oligarchs. You see, oh, sure, he called him. He was asking about the weather. There's always excused away, but boy, they just keep doing these things over and over and over again. After a while, there's a reason why serial killers are profiled by the FBI, because they all have the same pattern of behavior.
Well, I want to say this in defense of Abby Lowell. Like Abby Lowell, I am a lawyer, and I long to have clients like the Bidens who want to give me more business by A, committing more crimes, and B, covering up those crimes, and then C, obstructing those crimes, and then D, pardoning people for those crimes. The Bidens have it. I mean, they really have the big casino going on at the White House. And as far as Abby's concerned, I give him all the credit in the world for being a lawyer who just takes advantage. He, as they used to say at Tammany Hall, he's seen his opportunities and he took them.
Do you expect any further developments in this story? Will it be more than just John Levine at the New York Post reporting on this happenstance at the White House?
I think this will be taken over by other events which are going to come. I think the Trump case in New York is going to become devilishly important as it proceeds. It's obvious that Judge Merchan has made up his mind that he intends to convict Donald Trump, not to give him a fair trial, but to impose a verdict. And I want to say this to the two judges in the District of Columbia, both of whom I know personally, and both of whom I am extremely disappointed in, Judge Walton and Judge Lambert. They should stop talking about cases that are none of their business. Stop talking about presidential candidates. They are not politicians. If they want to talk about this stuff, resign from the bench and go out and get involved in politics. Otherwise, shut up.
Yeah, Joe, you said earlier right before break that you've never seen anything like this. Is there going to be any cost to this? Will they be sort of punished in any way?
I doubt it very much. There was a complaint already filed against Judge Walton by Mike Davis of the Article 3 Project. That went to something called the Judicial Council, the Circuit Judicial Council, which is chaired by the Chief Judge of the D.C. Circuit Court, that's Srinivasan, Judge Srinivasan. This is a very serious matter. What Reggie Walton did when he went on CNN and opined about the conduct of a defendant in an ongoing case, that was a clear, absolute, unequivocal violation of the canons of judicial ethics. Now, the court is going to have to do something. What they will do is they will slap his wrist and admonish him. And if Judge Walton is smart, which he is, because I know him, and he's a very interesting fellow. He has a great background. He's had a very interesting career as a judge. I think what happens with judges, and let me just say this, when you sit on the bench that long, you develop longings, and the longings are to be bigger than your britches and be involved in the greatest events of our time when they're not happening in your courtroom. And the January 6th case has given each of these judges, Judge Walton and Judge Lambert, a chance to say things from the bench about politics in the greater sense. That has been a mistake, because what does that do? It makes people think that judges are political, that what happens in their courtroom is not fair and is not judicious and is not objective and neutral. The damage that judges like Walton and Lambert do to the judicial process by getting involved in the political process is incalculable, because they now become subject to criticism. They should never put themselves in this position. These are two good people who've made terrible mistakes by publicly speaking. Now, by the way, Judge Lambert has done it in his courtroom. He said all of his stuff while he's sitting on the bench in individual sentencing proceedings, criticizing other defendants, criticizing President Trump, criticizing other people, stuff way outside the lines of judicial sentencing. Judge Walton took it a step further. Not only did he do it in his courtroom, he went on CNN. So Judge Walton is in a much more difficult position from a punishment standpoint. But nothing's going to happen to either one of these judges, because the media supports this. They magnify it. They think it's really, in fact, headline in Washington Post says judges appointed judges attack two judges attack Trump. Republican appointed judges raise alarm over Trump attacks on the law. That's none of their business. That's political discussion.
Yeah, and
that's not their job.
Meanwhile, you have lawyers who are facing criminal charges for giving advice to the president over obvious irregularities in the 2020 election and ballot counting processes. They're facing that. I've already seen many of them disbarred, including here in D.C. and Mr. Eastman in California. But then they're facing criminal RICO charges for actually advising their client. Judges can come out and completely defy any standards of propriety as a judge, but these lawyers are being disbarred and actually criminally prosecuted. It's almost like, Joe, there's two sets of rules in a two-tiered system of justice in this country.
Never happened in America. Never happened in America.
We got to leave it there. Joe, always good to talk to you. Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Hey, it's O'Connor and Company on it's Solar Eclipse Day.
It is.
It's like once in a generation do you have a moment like this. Although 7 years ago we did it. But we're not going to do it again here in North America for 40 years. No, 20 years. Sorry.
20 years.
20 years.
20 years.
In 2044.
Mm. And you'll be making fun of it then, too.
No.
Yes, you are.
I'll be making fun of you for being so into it.
I love the eclipse.
Eclipses are great. You know what we should next time?
Eclipses are
great. I'm fully in favor of them. Astronaut Tom Jones will join us coming up at 8:35 to discuss that. Joining us right now, though, we've got another doctor. Unlike Dr. Jill Biden, this is a doctor who can actually diagnose and solve a health issue that you might have. It's not one of those like decorative PhDs at the end of it. He's actually a doctor, Dr.
All
Marc
right.
Siegel. Marc Siegel joins us now to discuss a disturbing trend that we're seeing, tuberculosis and measles breakouts. And it seems, Dr. Siegel, to stem from these shelters that have been set up in various major cities to accommodate the illegal immigrants. Are there no screening processes or vaccinations, inoculations? I thought that's what Ellis Island used to do all the time, right? You come over, you got a disease, you're not going to come into the country until you get your shots and you're free of disease. What is that not our policy anymore?
Well, that's our policy for legal immigrants, but people that are coming across the border that are unfettered, unstopped, unchallenged, of course they can't be screened until after the fact. Once they're in a migrant shelter in Chicago, say if they get sick or somebody gets sick, then they get screened. 13% of those in the shelter in Chicago that the first outbreak occurred in had not been vaccinated. Now, there's a fairly high vaccination rate in Central America for measles, but it's not as high as ours is to begin with. And then, of course, if you're fleeing, you're not getting vaccinated at the same time.
Right.
Tuberculosis is happening because there's about 10 to 20% of the population in Central America has latent tuberculosis, which the Chicago Health Department is misreporting as latent non-infectious, but they're forgetting to tell you that 10 to 20% of those go on to be infectious, and then they only get partly treated in Central America because, again, they may not know the full course of treatment there, so you end up with drug-resistant tuberculosis, which gets you really, really sick. So these are two big problems. These are just two problems alone that are coming out of that.
And doctor, tell us also about the conditions. This is spreading in shelters where I assume people are sort of closely contained. There's not a lot of space in these shelters. So is that an additional concern that it can spread even quicker because of the close proximity people have to each other and possibly to people who have measles and tuberculosis?
Yeah, that's so true, Julie, but it's very different. Tuberculosis, you need prolonged exposure of hours to get it. You don't get it usually casually, but in the shelters, you have prolonged exposure for hours. Measles is unbelievably contagious.
Yes.
Literally, if you walk into a room where measles was 2 hours ago and you're not vaccinated, 90% chance you'll get it. So just simply being in that shelter and you're not vaccinated with measles, you're going to get it. You're definitely going to get it. So measles is spreading beyond the shelters now.
This brings back, Dr. Siegel, concerns that you've expressed on this program, and I've seen you express those, and we have expressed, which is this is why we need to have faith in our public health institutions, because when there is an outbreak like this, we need to be able to know that the information we're given is not shot through the lens of politics, that it is reliant on known scientific fact, and we're not being gaslit. And sadly, because of the way they handled the shots for COVID, where we're now learning that, they weren't telling us all the facts about it. They said you get the shot and you won't catch it and you won't spread it. And of course, that wasn't the case. With measles, we actually do have solutions, right? There can be a vaccination regime, but sadly, we're losing trust in those institutions.
Well, we shouldn't. I mean, I think we have to do what's good for us as a community, and public health messaging from people on podiums who haven't seen patients in many, many years, or as you say, have some kind of PhD. Although I'm a fan of PhDs, by the way. I don't want to knock them. I mean, the PhDs in education are one thing, but PhDs in public health or virology.
Yeah, but when they make it call you doctor, when it's just like an education thing from a junior college, it's like that's a red flag, isn't it, doctor? We can agree on that.
Of course. And the main problem is, of course, the on high, the podium. I mean, you know what they did, by the way, that during the pandemic that I've talked about a lot, is they didn't give me the shots to have in my office where I could have a discussion. You want to actually make people comfortable. You want them to be informed, and you want them to make the correct decision for themselves.
Yeah.
If I'm not even in the discussion, it's extremely problematic. Now, there's been a lot of drift over, to your point, Larry, to the measles shots. And I think that's really a bad idea because those shots have been around since the 70s. Yeah. They're tried and true. And we really have herd immunity with measles where we're protecting those around us who can't get vaccines.
That's right. Doctor, I do want to switch really quickly over to, you had a tweet about dog owners warning them that during the solar eclipse to keep the dogs inside. I'm a dog owner. Can you tell us a little bit more about this? Why?
What's your dog's name?
My Ivy.
Ivy is smarter than you are, or smarter than I am, at least.
Wow,
meaning
that's
that
fair
Ivy
to say.
probably knows. Is it a she or a he?
It's a she.
So she probably knows. She's not a they. She's a she.
Yes,
Right,
that's right.
exactly.
That's right. She knows.
No
who she is.
confusion in that
Right.
household.
Right. No confusion at all. So Ivy knows to avert her eyes from the sun. So it's not so much that. It's more that when the light changes, pets get nervous. Like, what's this? What's going on here? Why is it suddenly dark? And it's an 89% eclipse this time, back in 2017. And I still got the glasses, by the way. I'm a hoarder, so I still got the glasses. But in 2017, it was 100%. Now it's 89%. But Ivy is saying, what the heck is this? And gets nervous and anxious and scurs around and strains at the leash. So I think keep them inside. I think that. And the other thing is people driving cars during the eclipse, they all look up. And then of course, there's car accidents.
Right.
When you warned about the dogs, and I was worried there was like some sort of like werewolf situation that I should know about. So thank God, I completely misunderstood what you were going with. So just keep the dog inside.
Makes sense.
All right, thank you,
No,
Dr.
no
Siegel.
werewolves on this side of the Potomac.
No, and come on, I'm an idiot. That would be a lunar eclipse, not a solar eclipse. Come on, silly. Everybody knows that. Thank you, Dr. Siegel. Always good to talk with you.
To see you.
All right, take care. I am pleased to inform you that there is a total eclipse of the sun today. I don't believe that you have heard about this yet. By the way, I don't know about you, but after the program, I'm heading right to a Sam's Club, and I'm getting a pallet of toilet paper to protect myself from the eclipse, because you never know. You should always be prepared. I need water in my bunker, because the eclipse could bring on the end of the world. Although, listen, most people are excited about the eclipse because they want to see it, and they've traveled to this stretch across the country where they're going to get the full coverage.
You're enjoying this way too much.
If you overlay the Path of Totality stretch that starts in Texas and goes up to Maine, and then overlay that with the satellite imagery of the cloud cover, it's almost a perfect match. Sadly, those friends of yours who all went out of their way to rent an Airbnb in Terre Haute, Indiana for $1,000 a night, they're going to look up in the sky and they're going to see clouds.
Yeah,
it is going to be darker than usual because of the eclipse. But
yep, that's how it works.
This is God just tapping you on the shoulder, saying, "Just remember, I'm still in charge. I can do things." Dr. Tom Jones, astronaut extraordinaire, is going to join us coming up at 8:30 to talk about the eclipse, what's really going to happen here, and how it's going to get lots of kids interested in space, which is a good thing. We like that. Coming up at 7:53.